All right. Hi, Jeff. My name is Alex Uppel. Obviously, as you know, I'm a junior and CRP major, and I'm excited for this interview. And, why is planning important to you when you were in planning practice?
Sure. I think planning is important just because I feel like design space really means something. And when you travel around and see different parts of the country, different parts of the world, places that weren't planned, that just kind of haphazardly developed, you really notice how a planned community and a designed strategic type of infrastructure plays into enjoying the type of communities that we have here in the Midwest.
What were some of the challenges you faced as beginning as a planner, and how did you deal with them?
Well, I never worked directly for a city. I spent about 10 years working in consulting for cities, working with civil engineering firms, particularly on how they would modernize record keeping, digitizing old records that were drawn by hand of this is who owns this property in the county, and then taking kind of the next steps with that and how do we improve land assessment, how do we improve design based on having digital assets now instead of what they had typically had. So a lot of our planning issues that we dealt with were convincing people that that you could do things in a digital realm, and understanding what that meant, and seeing the different I guess the different capacities for planning and for visioning, things like that you could do once you moved into databases with a spatial component.
So as you face success, what were some of the biggest challenges that were presented with you through being in the planning field?
The biggest challenges always back to, and I think it's in planning, I think it's in business, I think it's in society, this whole idea of what the optimum is and what the ideal is, and that people can understand that, but when that conflicts with what is best for them, so whether that's a business that wants to put up signage and there's zoning that doesn't allow the type of signage they want, they may enjoy driving on the interstate and not having seen that signage, but when it affects their bottom line, that's where people really get antsy. And I think that I think that is illustrated very well in planning because it's so tactile and physical, but I see that in everyday life all the time. The not in my backyard type of attitude that people have.
Mm-hmm. What was your biggest project and most successful project, and how was it rewarding for you?
Probably the most applicable project, we did a consulting project with Lynn County, the Cedar Rapids area. This is probably 10 years ago, but Lynn County wanted to take the subjective piece out of whether or not they approve development, right? Because you have political forces, you have all those types of things when people are trying to build out communities, and the Lynn County Planning Office contracted with us to build a analysis system along this idea of LISA, Land Evaluation Site Assessment, LESA, where we scored, kind of built a grid across the whole county, all of Lynn County, and then scored it by a number of factors that I think came originally from a report from maybe the USDA, but took into account historic places within the county, and that gave the factor a certain value, if it was going to interrupt that, if it already had multimodal transportation, that was a higher factor. And we scored the whole county and built an analysis system that let the planners in Lynn County run any proposed site development through this process, and they codified that in Lynn County, so it had to be, say, I don't remember, maybe a 1 to 100 score, had to be above a 75 to even be considered for the project, and that was based on all these factors that the planning office and the planning commission and the county council had figured out. Was we're going to set up these objective factors first, and so you have to pass the objective factors before we'll subjectively look at whether or not we can do your development. And I always thought that was really cool, because that was a lot of the theory and a lot of the data that we would develop in our consulting practice, actually seeing that go into place and be used, was pretty
cool. Being that you're from Iowa State, what was your initial look on the planning profession when you began your career, and throughout your progression, how has it changed when you started and then when you ended?
I like outlook on planning as a profession?
Yes.
Well, I got into planning really because it was convenient. You know, I started out at Iowa State as a graphic design major, and that was really hard. And spent about 3 weeks in that as a freshman, and decided I didn't want to be that competitive. And I'd always been impressed by maps, and I'd always had kind of that idea for like designing space. And so when I decided graphic design wasn't me, CRP was the next office down. I saw these beautiful maps that people had drawn, and that's kind of what drew me into planning. You know, I continued that professionally after I got out of school, like getting into working with data, working with maps, and then working with governments on how they could better utilize that. So that was pretty cool, but that led me into software, that led me into like other types of software outside of working with governments, and that's where I am today. So I don't know that I soured on planning or anything, but you know, after about 10 years, I went back to school, got an MBA, and did something different. So.
What advice would you have for a young planner that is, you know, soon going to enter the field?
That's a really good question. I think you can learn a lot with planning, and I think that it is much like journalism. It's a random anecdote, but like State of Iowa has 3 journalism schools, which blows my mind. Its newspapers are closing all the time. But journalism teaches a way of thinking, and it teaches a really interesting type of person. Where journalists are hired in all sorts of industries, I think that's the same way with planners. It teaches a way of thinking. So in the business that I have today, like I work with communities all the time. They're not physical communities. It's not the city of Des Moines. It's a community of people that have a mindset around a certain idea, where they want to see an industry grow. And so I feel like I pull things from planning, things I learned in school, and utilize that in the industry I am today, even though no one other than me would associate that. So my advice to you would be, you know, do what you want to do coming out of planning, but also think broader about what you're learning now and how you can take that with the rest of your life.
All right. Thank you for your time.